She spent years rebuilding after he cheated, lied, and left her in ruins. Now at her first family reunion since, he barges in holding a baby he claims is hers. She deserves her mother, he says, voice dripping with venom. But she was never pregnant, never gave birth. The room watches her, suspicion in every pair of eyes. Her parents' silence cuts deeper than words. Her brother crosses his arms. You're not going to deny her too, are you? They believe him. And in that moment, she realizes he isn't just here to ruin her night. He's here to ruin her life. The smell hit her first. Rain and iron like wet pennies in the dark. It dragged her back to age 17, crouched in her childhood closet, clutching her mother's locket as her father's boots creaked down the hall. Some wounds never bleed. They just whisper when the door creaks open. The laughter had begun. So easily. After 5 years away, she'd almost believed in the warmth of wine and her sister's clumsy jokes. She traced the rim of her glass, red smudges of lipstick blooming like bruises on the crystal. Someone had put on music too loud for conversation, so the cousins spoke in exaggerated gestures, laughing over the din. Her mother's china glinted under soft bulbs. The table set like an apology dot, then came the sound. The door didn't knock. It slammed open with a violence that silenced Fork's mitter. Wind coiled in behind him, scattering napkins and extinguishing one trembling candle. And there he was, soaked to the bone, eyes bloodshot, cradling a bundle wrapped in a tattered pink blanket. Hair plastered to his forehead, lips pale from the cold. He looked less like the man she once loved and more like a drowned animal wild-cornered, trembling with something unspeakable. She deserves her mother, he said. His voice was low, raw, cracking. And then, as if he couldn't trust his own hands anymore, he laid the baby down. Right there, in the center of the table, beside the lipstick-stained wine glass and the half-carved roast chicken, a child small, still. Watching them all with unnerving calm, the baby's eyes green as shattered. Glass met hers. Heartbeat hook. Something inside her ribs stuttered, as if her body had betrayed her memory. She couldn't move. Couldn't swallow. The room seemed to tilt. But I never had a child. Her lips shaped the words in silence. Though no one heard. Her mother rose first, hand to chest. My God, she looks just like her. Her sister whispered, a hand darting to her arm. Fingers tight as a tourniquet. Her ex stood there, dripping rain onto her mother's Persian rug, breathing like he'd run for miles. He flinched. When the baby made a sound, tiny, wet, almost a mule, and for a moment she saw it, his fear. Not of her, but of the thing in his arms. Of what he'd become. You didn't even tell me, he said hoarsely. You just left. A memory ghosted up, his shaking hands gripping a torn receipt in their old apartment, his face crumpling when she told him she wasn't ready. Back then he'd whispered, then why does it feel like you already decided? Retention spike. But the torn receipt had said more than she ever admitted. Someone's fork clattered to the floor. The baby blinked slowly, lashes damp. A curl of dark hair stuck to her forehead. That same forehead. That same locket-shaped scar. No, this isn't mine. She stepped back hard enough to tip her chair. The sound cracked through the silence like a pistol shot. Her ex's jaw worked. His fingers flexed, loose now, as though releasing some long-held grudge. Do you know what it's like, he murmured, to watch her reach for someone who's not there? His voice thinned to a whisper. Do you? She didn't answer. She couldn't. Her hands found the silver locket at her throat without meaning to. The clasp was warm, the metal dull from years of thumbprints. Her father gave her mother that locket once, the same night he broke her nose. Maybe betrayal runs in blood. Outside, thunder grumbled. Her brother-in-law rose, slow and stiff, as if he could sense the invisible wire pulled taut between her and the man who'd come bearing the unthinkable. She wanted to scream, to shove the baby back into his arms and tell him to rot with his lies. But instead she stared at those green eyes, at the scar on that tiny brow, at the twisted pink blanket already unraveling. Silence set up. Her fingers brushed the table edge, finding a folded paper tucked under a Plea custody notice, edges softened by rain, heartbeat hook. It smelled of mildew in courtroom halls. She was shaking now. They all were, in their own ways. Her sister chewed a nail to the quick. Her mother's lips moved silently, prayer or curse. The baby's hand twitched, grasping at air. "Say something," her ex said, his voice breaking. "Please." Her tongue felt heavy, her mouth full of dust. She remembered a hospital bathroom years ago, cold tile, muffled sobs, a test flushed down. She remembered never telling anyone, not him, not herself. When she finally spoke, her voice cracked in half. "But I never had a child," she whispered, and no one believed her. Once, at 19, she'd watched a wasp drown in a glass of wine. Its frantic wings made no sound, its struggle hidden beneath the crimson surface. No one noticed but her. That image kept returning now. The house had gone heavy with silence. Heavy the way old attics smell, of dust, regret, and something sleeping too long. Truth dies quietly. Lies dance in the open. She stood with her back to the wall, hands curled into fists so tight her nails left half moons. The baby still lay on the dining table, blanketed in pink, eyes green as moss after rain. Every face in the room turned to her like sunflowers, but there was no warmth. Only suspicion growing roots. Her sister's voice cut the quiet first. "She has your eyes, Lena." A simple sentence, but it landed like a blade. "No," Lena said. The word was soft, but her throat burned from forcing it past her teeth. Her mother leaned on a chair, knuckles white. "You never told us. Why wouldn't you tell us?" The baby whimpered, a fragile sound. Her ex Daniel shifted, his coat dripping a slow rhythm onto the rug. She noticed then. His hands trembled, not from cold, from exhaustion, from holding it together too long. Retention spike. But exhaustion makes the best liars convincing. Because there's nothing to tell. Her voice broke slightly on nothing, but she didn't flinch. "I never had a child." Daniel's laugh was sharp, humorless. "You really want to play it that way?" He ran a hand over his face, and when it dropped, something raw lingered in his expression, not anger, grief. "After the procedure, after you left," he said, "I thought it was over too." But a month later, his words snagged. He glanced at the baby as though she might dissolve. "I got a call. She was in foster care. They said the mother was unreachable." Her stomach twisted. She remembered no call, no letter, only the clean, sterile clinic and her own shaking knees pressed together as the doctor spoke in euphemisms. "She's not mine," Lena said again. But even to her own ears it sounded like a plea. Heartbeat hook. A fork slipped from someone's hand and clanged against the floor. Daniel didn't move closer. He looked as if he wanted to, but something, pride, fear, both held him back. "She doesn't sleep unless I tell her your name." His voice cracked. "You think I want to be here? You think I haven't hated you every day?" For a split second, his mask slipped. Behind the fury was a man drowning like the wasp flailing because he'd built a world around someone who wasn't there. Her eyes darted to the baby's hand, fingers curling weakly, almost beckoning. She felt a flicker of something she refused to name. Silence set up. Her mother's clutch bag sat open on the counter, a folded document poking out. Custody papers. Lena. Her sister's tone had softened now, almost pitying. "Look at her." Really look, she did. The baby's face was heart-shaped, too familiar. There was a faint scar above her brow, same place Lena had split her own as a child. No. This isn't proof. Scars don't pass down like freckles. "Stop," she said. "Stop looking at me like," but the looks kept coming. They bloomed like bruises across every face. She felt her own body grow small under them, like she was 17 again, hiding behind locked doors as her father accused her of sins she never committed. Retention spike. But sometimes the accusation grows larger than the truth ever could. She glanced at Daniel. His wet hair clung to his forehead. He wouldn't meet her eyes now. She thought of the torn receipt in his wallet years ago, proof of a ring he never gave her. She thought of how his hands shook then too. The baby whimpered louder. Her mother, unable to bear it, reached forward. But Lena stepped back so sharply her heel struck the wall. "Don't touch her." The words spilled out before she thought them through. Every head turned. The baby's cry became a wail, filling the silence like rising water. Daniel's eyes lifted to hers, red-rimmed, desperate. "Please, she needs you." Lena felt the locket at her throat, thumb rubbing the tarnished metal. Inside it, a photo of her as a baby, green-eyed, unscarred. Her mother used to say she'd been born knowing too much. She pressed her back harder into the wall. Her heartbeat sounded loud, foreign. "But I never had a child," she whispered. This time, not even she believed it. She remembered sitting in a hospital corridor, one's hand sticky with antiseptic, the clock's second hand ticking like a bone caught in her throat. When the nurse said, "You'll feel better soon," she nodded, though she couldn't remember what was wrong. Memory is a house. Some doors stay locked for a reason. Now, standing in her own kitchen at 3 a.m., Lena stared at the stack of papers, spread across the counter like evidence in a crime she couldn't recall committing. Hospital bills, pharmacy receipts, a single torn page with her signature curling like smoke. Her locket lay open beside them, its hinge creaking faintly when she brushed it. One side held her baby photo, green eyes staring out. The other was empty. She'd meant to place her wedding photo there once, but it never fit. The fridge hummed. Pipes groaned. Rain needled the windows. Heartbeat hook. Her reflection in the black glass door looked older, hollow-eyed. Hair mussed, a stranger in her own home. The year after her father's funeral had always been blank. They called it a blackout year. Said grief and the pills she'd taken then could do that. She'd accepted it once. But now Daniel's words clawed at her ribs. "You signed the papers. I begged you not to, but you said it was better this way." She could still hear his voice on the voicemail he'd left, controlled, almost kind, like he pitied her. Like he was already rehearsing this story for an audience. Retention spike. But pity is a disguise for power. She flicked on her laptop and pulled up bank records. Nothing fit. No payments to the clinic. No adoption fees. But there were withdrawals, large ones. Dates that fell in that lost year. She scrolled faster. The cursor trembled under her fingers. One entry made her freeze. A $5,000 charge to Lawson & Co. Legal services. She didn't remember hiring a lawyer. A noise behind her made her flinch. "Can't sleep?" Daniel's voice. Low. Careful. He leaned in the doorway, shirt rumpled, his own eyes shadowed with exhaustion. There was no baby in his arms this time, only his phone. Gripped so tight she could hear the case creak. "You shouldn't be here." Her voice came out hoarse. "I thought we should talk," he said softly. "I don't want to fight you, Lena. I just want what's best for her." He stepped forward, and she noticed the faint scar along his jawline. She'd put it there, accidentally, with her nails during their last argument. The night she left him, bags packed, locket cold. Against her collarbone. "Why can't I remember?" she whispered. He sighed and leaned against the counter. Water dripped from his coat sleeve onto the tile. "You were gone, Lena, even when you were here. The meds, the grief, it ate you alive." His voice almost broke on, alive. For a moment, she saw it, his wound. The months he must have spent terrified, waiting for her to come back to herself. She remembered flashes his hand on her back at the pharmacy, her tears soaking his shirt, a torn receipt on their kitchen floor. Silent setup. Her eyes flicked to the USB drive. tucked half under a file folder. She didn't remember buying it, but it had Daniel's initials etched faintly on the side. "I don't believe you," she said finally. But the words tasted like ash. Daniel's jaw tightened. "I don't want to hurt you, Lena, but I can't erase what you signed." "Neither can you." He pushed a folded paper toward her. "Adoption consent." Her signature sprawled across the bottom. "No," she whispered. Her hand shook as she touched the ink. It looked like her handwriting. It felt like her handwriting. Heartbeat hook. But memory and ink don't weigh the same in your palm, she thought. Of her locket again, how she'd stopped wearing it during that year because even the small weight felt like too much. Daniel stepped back. His face softened, not triumph, not cruelty. Just a quiet, exhausted ache. "I stayed when you disappeared," he murmured. "Now I'm the villain for saving her." The rain picked up outside, rattling the glass like fingertips. Her phone vibrated against the counter. A text from her lawyer lit up the screen. "We need to talk. Urgent." The call came seconds later. Lena answered, barely breathing. "The papers are real," her lawyer said. "And they're signed in your handwriting." When she was 8, Lena once locked herself in her father's study. The drawers smelled of cedar and ash, full of secrets she couldn't name. Torn receipts, lipstick-smudged letters, a tiny silver key taped under the desk. She never found what it opened. Sometimes the truth lives in a locked drawer, and a lie holds the key. Tonight, her hands shook as she slid a credit card between the latch of Daniel's apartment door. The lock gave with a reluctant click, like it hated betraying him. She slipped inside. Breath shallow, coat damp from the mist. The air smelled of coffee grounds and his cologne. Familiar, sickening. Shadows pooled in corners where she remembered. Laughter once lived. She didn't let herself pause. She moved through the rooms like a trespasser in her own life, knuckles grazing walls, eyes darting for anything out of place. Heartbeat hook. The locket at her throat felt heavier tonight, its hinge clicking with each step as if it wanted to speak. His desk sat in the corner, papers stacked with deliberate neatness. She yanked at drawers, rifling through tax forms and grocery lists. Nothing. But then her fingers caught on resistance. A drawer that stopped halfway. She crouched, heart hammering, and felt along the underside. Her nails snagged on something. Thin metal latch. She pressed. The hidden compartment slid open with a reluctant sigh. Inside, a stack of letters tied with twine. Her name written on every envelope in her handwriting. She sank to her knees. Retention spike. But the letters didn't sound like her. Each page trembled in her hands, the words looping elegantly, coldly. "She cries for you at night. This is harder than I thought. It's better for all of us this way." Her stomach churned. She had no memory of writing them. No memory of this voice. Then she saw the smudged worn edges singed, as if it had been plucked from a fire too soon. The ink bled, but one name was still clear. Kalan Isla. The baby's name? Or someone else's? She pressed the paper to her lips, breathing it in like it might give her answers. Silent setup. Her fingers closed over a small USB drive beneath the letters. It was unlabeled, cold against her palm. She slipped it into her coat pocket without thinking. Behind her, the floorboards groaned. She froze. "I knew you'd come back here." His voice low, frayed at the edges. Her hand went to her locket. The metal burned against her skin. At 16, she overheard her mother on the phone, whispering about her as if she wasn't in the next room. "She's fragile, just like her." "Father," the words curled under her skin and never left. Betrayal never whispers. It roars in the mouths of others. Now the reunion hall smelled faintly of spilled wine and old perfume. Laughter swirled around her like a language she no longer understood. She stood near the buffet table, hands gripping a chipped china plate, its edge smeared with lipstick. The color reminded her of blood drying too fast. They didn't bother lowering their voices anymore. She always was unstable. Aunt Maura murmured to her cousin, I heard she signed the baby away herself. She shouldn't even be here. Heartbeat hook. A fork scraped a plate with a screech sharp enough to make her flinch. She caught her best friend's eye across the room, Anna, who once swore they were sisters in everything. But Anna looked away, her mouth tight. Even the voices pressed closer. They weren't loud, but they were everywhere, filling the spaces between clinking glasses and the too cheerful music. Retention spike, but the worst sound was silence. When she passed, her locket felt hot against her skin, the chain biting at her collarbone. She wanted to rip it off, hurl it across the room. Instead, she found herself moving through clusters of relatives with polite smiles that slipped the moment she passed, to the kitchen where her mother arranged desserts with trembling hands. Tell me. Her voice broke on the words. I need to know what's real. Her mother didn't look up. Lena, not here. Here, now. Did I? Her breath hitched. Did I give her away? Did I sign those papers? A spoon clattered to the floor. Her mother stooped to pick it up, but her fingers fumbled, sending it skittering under the counter. Stop asking. You owe me the truth. Her nails dug crescents into her palms. Why won't anyone believe me? Her mother straightened slowly. The lines in her face seemed deeper, carved by years of holding back. Because you begged us not to tell you. Lena's mouth went dry. What? You were falling apart. You made us swear. You said you couldn't. I never. You wanted her gone, her mother whispered fiercely, eyes wet. You made me sign too. Heartbeat hook. The china plate slipped from Lena's hands, shattering on the tiles. For a moment, no one moved. The sound echoed in the hallway as voices still beyond the kitchen door. The lipstick smear stared up at her from a jagged shard. She remembered the sound of old cassette reels spinning when she was a child, her father's mixtapes, the hiss between tracks like a breath caught in the throat. Back then she believed recordings never lied. Proof doesn't vanish on its own. Her fingers trembled over the cracked plastic case in her therapist's archive room. Dust filmed everything like a secret poorly kept. Rows of labeled tapes lined the shelves, each bearing her name and a date. But the sequence faltered. 12 dates missing, gaps like broken teeth. Her locket thudded against her chest as she bent closer, scanning the shelves again. Nothing. 12 weeks gone. The year she'd forgotten. Heartbeat hook. Somewhere in the building, a door slammed. She startled, breath quickening. She had called Daniel earlier, voice shaking, asking if he'd ever heard the tapes. He'd sounded tired, almost tender. I don't even know they exist, Lena. You've got to stop looking for ghosts. But ghosts don't leave tape labels behind. Retention spike. And the labels hid something worse, faint smudges like fingerprints. Dragging through ink, she brushed them with her thumb and felt a chill crawl her spine. The room smelled faintly of lavender oil and mildew. A memory flared, her therapist leaning forward, voice low, asking, "Do you trust yourself to remember?" Back then she'd laughed. Now the question felt like a knife. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Unknown number. She hesitated, then swiped to answer. On the line, static crackled, then faintly a child's muffled crying. Her own voice followed, low and jagged. I can't be her mother. No, she whispered, clutching her locket so tightly the metal bit her palm. The crying swelled, filling her ears. Then a second voice distorted, soft as a breath in her ear. Listen closely. They made you forget. She remembered her sister's hands smoothing her hair after a fall, gentle, almost maternal. She'd whispered, we don't tell Mom about this, okay? Even at 10, Lena understood how silence could protect or kill. A picture is a weapon. And in his hands, it killed her. Now she stared at the photograph on her kitchen counter. A glossy 4x6, her body reclined in a hospital bed, cradling a newborn. Her face was pale, hair stuck to her damp temples, but the eyes were hers. Green. She had believed it for 3 long days, until the forensic tech's words cracked her open. It's not real. I generated. Nearly flawless. Heartbeat hook. The photo shook in her grip as if it wanted to escape. Why would Daniel show her this? Why would her family nod along? Their complicity was its own language, one she couldn't yet translate. She turned the photo over. The back was blank except for a faint watermark. Barely legible. Capstone legal imaging. Retention spike. But the watermark hid something worse, a date. The same week her father's will had been updated. The kitchen smelled faintly of rain and mildew. She gripped the locket at her throat, thumb rubbing the tarnished edge. Inside, her baby photo stared back, no less real than this image in her hand. Her phone vibrated against the counter. A message from the lawyer she'd hired in secret. There's a clause. The estate passes only to a direct bloodline heir. She. Read it twice before the meaning seeped in. Her mother's voice echoed in memory, brittle and soft. You wanted her gone. You made me sign too. Lena pressed her palm flat against the cold marble counter. Something moved beneath the surface of her thoughts, like a fish circling in dark water. Silence set up. Her fingers brushed the USB drive she'd hidden in the sugar jar days ago, its faint scratches catching the light. Outside, a car door slammed. Tires on gravel. Daniel. She didn't move. He entered without knocking, as if he still belonged to this house. His coat was damp, his hair mussed, but his eyes carried a strange fragility, like a man who had rehearsed his righteousness too often. To believe it anymore, you found it. His voice didn't accuse, it mourned. Why? She asked. He ran a hand over his mouth. For a moment, his mask slipped. Beneath it, exhaustion, fear. You don't understand, he said softly. It was supposed to be easy. But then she looked. Like you. Heartbeat hook. A glass tipped in the sink, shattering into 100 sharp truths. Who is she? Lena's voice cracked. Who is Isla really? Daniel's eyes darted away. The pause stretched, too long, too loud. Then he whispered, almost tenderly. She isn't yours, but she might be your sister's. She remembered sitting in the clinic's waiting room at 22, staring at a water stain on the ceiling, while the nurse's voice blurred into background noise. The clipboard in her lap felt heavier than it should have. It's just eggs, not children, she told herself. The pen shook as she signed. Blood ties bind. But who tied the knot? Now. The DNA report lay on her kitchen table, its language sterile, detached. Biological mother, Lena Ashcroft, not from a pregnancy. Not from any choice she remembered making as a mother. From desperation. From selling pieces of herself she thought she'd never see again. Her locket felt hot against her collarbone. She thumbed the clasp, but it refused to open, the hinge stiff. Like it was holding its own secrets. Heartbeat hook. A droplet of coffee slipped from her trembling cup and spread across the paper like blood diluted in water. She didn't notice the tears until they blurred the letters. Her phone buzzed. She didn't want to answer. She did anyway. Lena. Daniel's voice measured, almost gentle. The way people speak to someone holding a weapon. You know now, he said. Why? The single word came out strangled. Your father's will. Had a clause. No heir, no inheritance. But then I found out about your donation. You manipulated the system. You took her. I adopted her, Daniel said tightly. You weren't there, Lena. You didn't even know she existed. Retention spike. But the clause hid something worse. It had been added the same week she signed the donation forms. She isn't a pawn. Lena whispered. I raised her, he said, his voice fraying. You think I wanted this? You think I didn't hate myself every day for what it took? For a moment, she heard at his wound. The loneliness. The small terror in his breath. Silence set up. Her fingers brushed the USB drive she'd hidden beneath a napkin holder, its edge biting into her palm. You made me her mother, she said. Standing, heartbeat hook. A glass slid off the counter and shattered at her feet. Footsteps echoed on the porch. The door creaked. Now I'll make you regret it. She remembered being 10, standing at the top of the stairs, listening to the soft click of the front door lock. Her mother had turned it each night with trembling fingers, whispering, "This keeps us safe." But Lena had always wondered, what if the person outside wasn't the threat? What if it was the silence inside? When the last lock clicks open, you hear your own heartbeat again. Now the courtroom was empty. Just her, the echo of her shoes on marble, and a custody order folded in her coat pocket like a weapon too sharp to touch. Daniel hadn't looked at her when they'd read the ruling. His hands clenched in his lap, the veins standing out like a map of every choice he couldn't undo. For the first time, she'd seen something fragile in him, like a man who had spent so long holding a story. Together he didn't know how to live outside it. The locket rested in her palm, warm from her skin. She had opened it before the verdict, eyes tracing the baby photo tucked inside, hers, and now Isla's, two sets of green eyes staring back, both too young to understand what had been taken from them. Heartbeat hook. The hall clock ticked too loudly, each second dragging like the pull of deep water. The nursery door creaked as she pushed it open. Isla sat on the floor with a toy in her lap, mouth slightly open in wonder. When Lena stepped in, the child's eyes lifted green, unblinking, the same shade that had haunted every mirror in her house for months. She froze. Was she ready for this? She thought of her own scars, visible and hidden, the years of running, of silence, of selling pieces of herself because it was easier than staying whole. Retention spike. But the photo hid something worse, not the past, but a future she hadn't dared imagine. "Hi," Lena whispered. Isla tilted her head, as if memorizing her voice. Then her tiny fingers reached out, grasping air. Lena's throat tightened. She didn't move at first. What if she failed her? What if she became every terrible thing Daniel ever said she was? But the hand kept reaching. Silent setup. Her other hand brushed the USB drive in her coat pocket. Evidence. Not for now. For later. She knelt slowly. The carpet smelled faintly of baby powder and cedar. Isla's hand found hers, warm, small, impossibly strong for something so delicate. Heartbeat hook. Lena felt it then. A click, soft and final, deep in her chest. She didn't look like her past. She looked like her future. She remembered the first time she shattered a mirror. 17, drunk on anger and cheap wine, watching her reflection splinter into jagged mouths. Her mother had whispered from the hallway, "Breaking glass doesn't break the girl inside it." But back then Lena wasn't sure there was a girl left. Healing isn't soft. It's brutal and loud and worth it. Now she sat in a therapist's office that smelled faintly of eucalyptus and dust. A small white clock ticked too fast on the wall. Her hands gripped the locket around her neck, thumbs circling its dull surface like she could rub the tarnish off her memory. "It's a process," her therapist said gently. "Not a straight line. More like a spiral." Lena didn't speak. She was still spiraling. The fragments came in flashes, her signature on the papers, her mother's voice whispering, "We made a promise." The sound of Ila's first cry echoing not in reality, but in dreams so vivid they stained her waking hours. Heartbeat. Hook. Her fingernails dug crescents into her palms until they hurt enough to feel real. She had always thought of her lost year as a void, but now pieces floated up sweetness among the wreckage. A stranger holding her hair back as she vomited in a gas station bathroom. The smell of rain-soaked soil as she sat barefoot on a porch she couldn't place. A man's laughter, not Daniel's, soft, unassuming, quickly swallowed by shame, retention spike. But the memory hid something worse, the faint outline of a crib in the corner of an unfamiliar room. She swallowed hard. "You're allowed to hold both truths," the therapist said. "The pain and the parts of you that survived it." The locket clicked open in her hands. On one side, her own baby photo. On the other, a new photo, Isla grinning, chocolate smeared across her cheek. The hinge no longer stuck. For months, She'd been terrified of holding her daughter too close, afraid her own broken edges would cut the child. But now she realized Isla had survived edges sharper than hers. Silent setup, her fingers brushed. The USB drive tucked deep in her coat pocket, a reminder that justice wasn't finished yet. Outside, children shrieked on a playground, their voices rising like tiny rebellions. I don't know how to forgive myself, she admitted. Her therapist's smile was small but steady. Start by saying her name without fear, Lena exhaled. Isla. Heartbeat. Hook. The name felt heavy at first. Then it felt like hers. If she could forgive herself, maybe she could teach her daughter too. She remembered planting tulip bulbs with her mother the spring after her father left. The soil was cold, clinging to her small fingers, but her mother's voice stayed steady. Even burned ground grows flowers. You just have to wait. Back then, Lena hadn't believed her. Now the backyard smelled faintly of damp earth and old ash, from the fire pit they'd gathered around the night before. The reunion was over. Paper cups lay tipped in the grass like toppled pawns. The air felt lighter, but fragile too, as if peace was a glass dome someone had set down carefully. The back door creaked. Her mother appeared on the step, apron still, dusted with flour. They've gone, she said softly. Good. Lena's voice carried no anger now. Only weight. Her mother looked smaller in the doorway, hands twisting at the apron string. You were right to be angry. You let too many lies take root. I thought they'd protect us, but all they did was grow thorns. Heartbeat. Hook. A sparrow darted low across the yard, its wing brushing Lena's hair. She didn't flinch. Behind her, Isla toddled barefoot in the grass, chasing a drifting dandelion seed. She turned to look at Lena, green eyes catching sunlight. The child smiled, a pure, unburdened thing. Retention spike, but her smile hid something deeper, a quiet echo of Lena's own, long buried. Her sister came out holding a faded slip of paper. She pressed it into Lena's hand without a word. The receipt bore Lena's signature, faint and smudged. Therapy sessions from the blackout year, proof of the lost chapters of her life. Silent setup. The USB drive waited in Lena's coat pocket, cool and solid against her thigh. Not a weapon yet, but ready. Isla stumbled closer, her small hand tugging at Lena's sleeve. Up, she said, soft but certain. Lena froze. For a breath, her scars pulsed loud in her mind. Could she hold this child without cutting her? But her therapist's voice whispered back, you don't have to be unbroken. You only have to stay. Heartbeat. Hook. She bent and lifted Isla. The girl fit perfectly in her arms, her weight grounding Lena like roots pushing into earth. Her mother stepped down from the porch. Can we start again? Lena held her gaze. We can start. But write the story now. The wind curled around them, stirring the ashes in the flower beds. Amid them, green shoots pushed bravely toward the light. This time, no one gets to write her story but her.